Welcome to Controlling the Mind and the Machine podcast. I am your amazing host, Erica Chadwick. Oh man, I am so excited about episode number 1 that aired last week. Super proud of it. Had my buddy Dave on there. Hopefully you guys check that one out. If you haven't, add that to your watch list. Check it out. Also, you should subscribe to my channel. Why? Because it'll help me get free shit. And I really love to give stuff away. I'm going to be giving away, I've got some cool stuff lined up actually. I've got some backpacks, some like 3-day, however you say that, backpacks, like the tactical ones with all the molly and the fucking Velcro and all of that stuff. And I also have, what do I have? I've got some cool t-shirts. I've got some triggers. I got all kinds of stuff. So you definitely want to subscribe to the channel. You want to like my videos. You want to do all of that. Man, it was really cool to have my next guest on. We talk a lot about his experience with there was a popular standoff that he was involved in, the Bundy Ranch militia. Do yourself a favor and Google it. Pull it up on the YouTube. Super crazy shit with like sovereign citizens like trying to stand their ground. So Thom was involved in that. Thom Jackson is a retired deputy chief out of Nevada. So he worked for the state of Nevada, and he's just a super cool guy. Definitely one of my ADHD buddies. We go on some rabbit trails for sure. But what I like about it so much is we talk about the ego. We are getting into it. The ego, that is, you know what the ego is. You've seen it in other people. You know, when like you see someone, just like when you pull them over or you hear about a case or you see something on the news and the suspect is just so far into some shit that it's just like, what are you doing? Like, come on, you gotta like stop, get it together, And that's kind of the ego, right? Where it's this defense mechanism that people go into where you're in that fight or flight state and you're just, your body is fueled by emotion and feelings and reactivity. And there's very little logic and intelligence that's happening in those moments. So we talk about the ego and how that plays a part in everything, but we all have one. So I think it's really cool. We get into it. Oh, we also, holy shit, you guys, the very end of the podcast, like, I don't know, there's like 5 minutes left of the podcast. We get into the wheel of emotion or the feeling wheel. I don't know what you call it. But the wheel of emotion is life-changing. It is everything that you need to know. It's a huge tool that you can bring into your debrief. I posted it on my on the Instagram, on the internets. Okay, so if you go to Tech Mobility on Instagram, you'll see this color wheel. It's insane how it works, but there's when you think about how you're feeling, you're like, oh, I feel angry, or I feel sad. Those are kind of like big generalized statements, and they can be broken down into very different adjectives or very different emotions or feelings that can help you understand yourself a little bit better, so that you can when you can become self-aware, you can know where you want to be instead. So like example, I can say that I feel angry, but within the sort of these subcategories of anger, there's also frustrated, there's mad, there's critical, and then, there's infuriated, there's jealous, there's ridiculed, betrayed. Those are all sub emotions of the feeling of anger. So we talk about the wheel of emotion and how it would be really cool for debriefs to bring that into the conversations so that in that non-judgmental kind of like umbrella of trust environment after an incident, you guys can look at each other or look at yourselves and figure out where you were at so that you can avoid that in the future. You know what I mean? So I love that we brought it up. It was a really, really cool moment. So make sure to stay tuned to the podcast for the last little bit. It's awesome. Awesome. Shout out to sponsor of this podcast. We got a sponsor, Raven Crest Tactical. That's actually the company that I work for. So they didn't really have a choice. But Raven Crest Tactical sells quality spring-assisted out-the-front knives. Use it, abuse it, tear it. I've got an unlimited lifetime warranty. Everything is assembled in the U.S. and they are still going strong amidst the coronavirus shutdown. So they're located in Mesa, Arizona, but also you can purchase their stuff on the web. And if you use coupon code ERICA, ERICA, you can get yourself 10% off right meow. All right, we are going to jump into the podcast, get this thing a-going. There's definitely a lot of background noise on this. I'm sure I'll get better at this. I'll get some better equipment, but we're also having to do this shit remote because everything's locked down. So the next few podcasts we have lined up are going to be, me doing Zoom or FaceTimes. So the audio is not that great, but like, to be fair, all you Letterkenny fans, Letterkenny fans, I am not a Letterkenny fan. I think it's quite possibly the dumbest show, like, ever. But I will watch it with other people that find it funny because I like laughing with other people. But it's so fucking stupid. I don't understand it. I just stare at the TV like, is this supposed to be funny? I forgot what I was just talking about. Oh, to be fair, that's right. You're used to listening to Dispatch and, talking to each other on your radios. So you're used to shitty audio. So you'll be fine. But yeah, so let's get into the podcast. I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Okay, I have with me Thom Jackson, but spelled Thom.
That's right. It's true.
Also, if you Google him, you will find a large black male, also named Thom Jackson.
Goddamn right.
I was looking for him like, nope, that's not him.
Not him, not it.
So I met Thom a couple weeks ago, or like a month ago. I don't have a sense of time. He has his own podcast. Tell us about your podcast. What's your podcast all about?
So my partner Ivan and I have a podcast, and we are the self-righteous douchebag podcast.
I was gonna say, is this your life partner, Ivan, or do you want to clarify?
Right. And we talk about martial arts, jiu-jitsu in particular, but martial arts, and he's a still active police officer. I'm a retired police commander. So we talk about first responders and the stresses of the job and some things we've seen. And we just kind of ramble on like a pair of idiots. There's a lot of cursing. There's some tomfoolery. We're not smart men, is the bottom line, but we do have a good time.
Oh, it was a good time. They had me on their podcast to talk about tackleability and, police stressors and PTSD and shit like that. So that was a really cool little conversation. Thanks for having me on that one.
For sure.
So I tried doing some searching around to just see what I could find out about you.
Uh-oh.
And there's not a ton of information available. So I figured I would just kind of get to know you because I don't really know you, but I loved some of the things that you brought up when we were chatting. And this podcast I created as a way to talk about cop stories, to talk about, motivations for becoming police officers, family life stuff. But ultimately, I'm a very solutions-based person. So I want people to hear things that work for you in certain settings. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today is that shit.
Okay.
So please tell me, when did you get involved in policing?
Before we do that, just a comment.
Yeah.
My not finding much on me socially, I like that. That was intentional. I tried to keep as low profile as possible. It's dangerous in the end. I had a couple moments where somebody did say, "Hey, I'm going to come to your house." And,
really?
Yeah. So you answer as best you can. My standard answer after the third or fourth time somebody said it was, "Well, okay, but when I kill you in the driveway, I'm going to drag you in and then back out so it looks like I shot you in the house." So, just so you know.
That's right, fucking crazy.
So, but yeah, that was intentional. I try to keep as low. We also had a rule: don't be on the news unless you intend to be on the news. Unless you went out that day planning to be on the news. But other than that, don't be on the news.
I did see a video that you did on Police One, and so I watched that. But really, that was all I found. I was like, how many pages deep do I have to go into Google? Fuck.
Right. So I started policing almost out of necessity. I joined the Army 10 days after I turned 18. I was physically on the ground in boot camp. And then it was that was extended parenting, which I clearly needed. Right, I had to get out of that trailer park, so I did that for a few years. And then when I decided I couldn't work in the Army anymore, not full time anyway, because I had some maturity issues. Actually, Ivan and I have talked a lot about maturity issues and having a hard time answering to people that you perceive to not be as talented as you are. I found that very difficult when I was much younger. Still kind of do. So I came out and I kind of bombed around a little bit. I handled tigers for Siegfried and Roy, because I had a strong animal connection here in the valley before I joined the military.
You what?
I handled tigers for Siegfried
what?
and Roy.
Did you say tigers?
Yeah, tigers. Tigers. Lions and tigers.
You can't just drop that in a fucking sentence I handle tigers. What?
Yeah, it's true. Before I was out of high school, I was handling animals on the strip and shows, horses and birds. And then from that connection, when I got out, I needed a job and they needed a handler. So, I handled tigers for Siegfried and Roy. But after a year, it became clear you're either Siegfried and Roy or you are not Siegfried and Roy. And the guy I was working next to had been working there 22 years and doing exactly the job I was doing.
So I don't actually know. What?
So I was doing the same job I was doing as soon as I was competent. He was doing 22 years later. I'm like, okay, so this goes nowhere.
I don't actually know who Siegfried and Roy is. I know the names, they're famous names, but I don't know what they do or who I thought they were magicians?
They were magicians and exotic cats, exotic animals in their act. And they, I got the allergies. And they...
Is it though? Is it?
Yeah, right. So they were really, really successful. They were the number one act on the strip for a long, long time. And even after they kind of got down into more of a mid-range of success, Mr. Roy eventually got mauled by a tiger. And that's why they closed the show. He got mauled on stage. Yeah, oops.
The animal rights person inside of me is well.
That's how that works, right?
Don't fuck with cats.
Their internal story is that he had a stroke and she was trying to save him. She grabbed him by the neck and drug him off. I don't necessarily doubt it. His relationship with those cats was spooky. It was supernatural. We could have a cat. I had a cat super upset with me because I was moving the cubs, and the cub kind of mewed, and the cat was pissed about it. She was mad, and he went into the enclosure with him. I was shocked. I thought, I'm gonna watch this guy die now. He went in the enclosure and calmed her down.
No.
Freaking 800-pound tiger. I'm like, okay, there, Mr. Roy. One day, just because it's funny, one day I was told to go get the duck. There's ducks in the illusion where the duck comes from one end of the stage and disappears in another part of the theater or whatever. I come back with the ducks in the crate, and the guy goes, "That's the wrong duck." And they're all the same duck. They're all the Affleck duck. I'm like, whatever, man. I thought he's messing with me. Bigger than life first show that night. That duck comes out, flies to the back of the room, lands on somebody's table, takes a shit, and flies away. They were like, that is the wrong duck, bro. Yeah, clearly.
Okay, so you were handling tigers.
Right. So, but that was going nowhere. So I started applying. I decided that I like to be outside. I don't mind working with people. I got some adrenaline junkie in me. So I just actually applied shotgun style to every agency that I could put an application into, which is not uncommon. And I ended up with the Nevada Highway Patrol, which in some ways was a huge blessing. In some ways, whatever. But I didn't go into it because I was going to save the world or because I give really much of a shit of what anyone else does. I went into it because, frankly, I needed a job and I thought I'd be a good fit. And I was. So away I go, right? But over the time, it's not that I ever fell in love with the public. It's not that I ever fell in love with public safety. I really, really don't care what people do as long as they're not bugging me or mine.
That's like a super, before I had known cops and become friends with a lot of officers, I didn't realize that is so much of the mentality. Like when you're on, but when you're off, like, bye.
Yeah. Mind your business. We built a stock. I got to a place where I didn't need. We're going to be super frank, right? You don't need the story, right? So I got to a place where I didn't need even one more perfect little Eagle Scout who never had to choose between paying his rent and paying his car insurance. Not even one more. I need men and women who have had real life experience, who've had to make hard choices, and can throw some real world compassion in there rather than be this perfect guy. My life's perfect, so you must behave perfectly too.
Yeah.
It's just not, that's not who I needed. But we did have a pretty standard conversation with the new folks as soon as they hit the ground after training, when they were about to start field training. And there were some highlights of it. One was, you don't care if your neighbors smoke pot. You really, really don't. It's not on the list of things you care about. You don't care if you have a neighbor who rides his quad through the end of the cul-de-sac into the desert out to the 7-Eleven for more beer. You don't care. That's not your issue.
Right.
If you've got a loud party, call somebody on duty, but under no circumstances do you need to go over there and confront people.
Yeah.
Mind your fucking business.
That's
right.
Good.
And then I had one kid, he let me down, but he let himself down badly. He comes in one day and he says, "Hey," I was a captain at the time, said, "Hey, Cap, I got to talk to you." "Well, what's up, man?" He said, "You know that talk about loud parties?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I went over and confronted them." I said, "How'd that go?" He said, "Well, I ended up calling somebody on duty anyway because they weren't having it from me." I'm like, "Right." He said, "Well, the thing is, Cap, I was staying with my grandma and now I'm moving out." I'm like, "Oh, you laid that neighbor on your nana. Oh, good for you, bro." He's like, "I know, man." I'm like, "Hey, man, we tried to tell you." The other stuff we told him that was super important, and if we're going to talk to cops, especially new cops, the two ways to get yourself fired are going to involve sex, money, or drugs, or some combination of the three. I never fired anybody, but I handled the paperwork of the people who fired themselves several times. It was always sex, drugs, or money.
Like how so?
Well,
like one, example.
In a lot of places, it's probably not that difficult to get a date when you're a cop.
Oh yes, there's a name for these. It's like cuff bunnies.
They call them. So you hear badge bunnies sometimes.
Badge bunnies.
But male, female, young, old, it's probably not that difficult to get a date, and your law enforcement contacts are not your dating pool. These people, I'm just telling you, this shit happens. This is a real thing. These people are emotionally vulnerable when you show up, and then if you show up with your flaming sword and you make their trauma go away, and you're the savior.
That's so true.
That's an easy strike, right?
That's so true. Wow. Yeah.
So it's and then you get a one-off. I had a one-off where he met her on a contact, and they really were kind of immediately in love. I mean, they got married, and the whole good Cinderella story. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. But because we knew that was a thing out there, we would tell guys and gals, listen, if you think you made a real connection here, and this isn't just the stress of their moment and your role in their drama today, tell them, I am going to be at this bar or restaurant, this date, this time. And put it out a week. If a week from today you feel like meeting me there for ice cream soda, they'll show up if they want to.
Yeah.
If they don't want to, you saved yourself a lot of trouble. We would have, we did have girlfriends show up and say, he cheated on me and I want you to do something about it. What the fuck am I going to do with that? Right? But your reputation in a police station, your reputation is your only currency. And you are only as good as your last contact. It gets around that your girlfriend came to talk to your boss about the way you behave. You don't want that. That's not a thing you want. Too much, particularly in like high volume gang units, high volume interdiction units, a lot of money goes through your hands. We pulled just short of $1 million. It was $206 short of $1 million out of a single car.
Oh.
Car's on a transporter. Driver has no real record of where the car came from. I mean, we don't have an owner for this money, right? So we got all this money, and my buddy's like, man, I'm really tempted to do a bad thing. I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, if I go by the ATM, I'll throw another $200 at this thing, and we'll cover the full mill, dude. And I was like, no.
Oh, God.
God damn it. And then there's dope's just dope. And cops are not immune to self-medicating.
Yeah.
Cops are not immune to addictive personalities. And the dope's easy. I mean, there's easy dope out there. If you're running in those circles, you're running on the other side of it, but you get a look at what it looks like on their side, and it's not hard to find. One day I kind of thought I'd made it, because we did a talk again. Another talk was kind of rolled in the same one about off-duty survival. Don't wear your Fraternal Order of Police T-shirt to the Nickelback concert. That's stupid, right?
I hate that.
If you're wearing two wallets because you've got a badge wallet and a wallet, the bad guy behind you sees that shit, right? Don't have I'm a cop tattoos on your neck, right? That show. I'm not.
All the fucking Spartans that are like right here. It's like, you guys.
Yeah, wear long sleeves then, bro. I had a couple off-duty events, but we had some practical, some real-world stuff too with your loved ones. You need to sit down and have a talk about, listen, if we're in a 7-Eleven and it gets robbed, you go out the back door. All of these places have a back door. You go out the back and you dial 911. If I choose to make a stand, I'll make a stand. If I don't, I will go out the back with you. What we don't do is say, my daddy's a cop and you should put that down, right? There's some real world discussions about, okay, you go and you dial 911 and we meet at the car, or we meet wherever your rally point is.
That's such a weird conversation. I went on a ride along with Josh, and I'm just like, I have all this anxiety in my body. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, what happens? And he goes, if something happens, he's like, you get in my truck and you go. And he's just like going through this whole scenario with me. And I'm like, so I don't stay and help? Or he's like, bitch, no. He's like,
and I'm glad he was listening. Because that's the conversation we had. I mean, I thought I'd made it one day. I thought I was doing a good job. I think I was, because I was in 7-Eleven, and the two dudes behind me were talking about their marijuana deal while I was standing in line, off duty. And I was like, that's perfect. Perfect. That's exactly who I want you guys to think I am. But you have to have that conversation. Your kids are done answering the door. I mean, that's a thing you got to say. Your children are no longer allowed to answer the front door. That's simply the rule. I'm sorry.
That's such a different world.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
They have such better tools now, though. These kids can call each other on the cell and say, hey, I'm coming over. Tell your dad not to shoot me, right? Tell your mom not to kick me in the face when she opens the door.
Oh, man. Okay, so you were a trainer then, right? So you were involved in training? Like, what did that look like? Training who and what?
So my two primary focuses were use of force and leadership. I did the driving training just because it was fun, right? It's their car and you can tear it up. I jumped one in the parking lot of a Reno Hilton once and sort of smashed the bottom of it a little bit. Sorry about that. Patrol. But my two primary focuses were use of force and leadership. Force just because it's fun. You get some mat time. You get to play with your friends. You get to roll around. And it's fascinating from a legal point of view. The deeper you get into it, it's a rabbit hole. There are no good answers. And you try to, at the beginning, you're getting just the bones of it, just what people's constitutional rights are. And you kind of get the sense, okay, if I do it exactly like they taught me on the mat room, I'm going to be okay, which is not quite true. But it's close enough to true for new troops. And then as they get a little deeper and they get a little more sophisticated and they learn more, force is really a seizure. So search and seizure, figure deadly force. I saw you making a face.
No, I was thinking, I've never heard that before. So I've never heard that concept before.
It's really a seizure. The deadly force is the ultimate seizure, right? They seize your life. I mean, I stole this from, I don't know if you ever reached out to Brian. I stole this from Brian, but he's right.
Oh yeah, I did. We had a whole talk.
He's a dude, man. It's always the money. A citation with a detention is keeping you from moving forward with your day and being productive, and maybe I held you back and you're late to work. Mm-hmm. A citation is more money. Now we're getting deeper in your wallet. An arrest is more money, right? Now we've taken away your ability to produce income and probably charging you fines and that kind of thing. All the way up to an execution is the ultimate fine, right? Now you will never create any more value or money in your life. Force is really a seizure. So, and that's how the law looks at it too. So these cops start with the idea that I can use force to enforce the law, defend myself or others. True. But understand that this Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable search and seizure is the overarching position. So you think about force. Is it okay to walk up to somebody and shoot them in the back of the head?
No.
Well, yeah, I mean, your immediate thought is, I'm going to shake my head no to that, right? Unless they're standing next to an airport tarmac with an anti-aircraft missile on their shoulder pointing it at a Southwest jet that's about to take off. Might be acceptable then.
Yeah.
Might, right? If the kid is bopping down the street with his backpack on, his backpack's making that distinctive rattle that rattle cans make because he's a tagger, is it okay to grab him by his backpack and say, hey, I need to talk to you? Physically hold him in place to talk to him. Depends on who you are, right? What more do you know and what can you articulate, right? If the kid pushes you, can you grab him and snap him to the ground and hook him up? Maybe. If the kid pushes you, could you kick him in the crotch as hard as you can and throw an elbow across his eyeball? Probably not. But where is the middle? And that's why force was so fascinating to me. We get into these rabbit holes. I asked one of my troops one day. I walked up and he's doing a search, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing, man?" And he tells me, his name is Mike. I'm like, "Hey, Mike, what are you doing, man?" And he tells me, and I said, "What kind of search you working in there, buddy? Because it's all exceptions. You have an absolute right to privacy. Anytime you get searched by law enforcement, you are there working in an exception to your right. So what kind of search you working on there, buddy?" And he goes, "Shit, I think the illegal kind." I said, "I think so too."
Oh my God.
Maybe we should stop that. He goes, "I think I will." I said,
I think we should stop that.
I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds fun. So it's they're so closely tied together, and the cops start telling each other rumors and myths. What's called a Terry Pat, and what the real law is around the Terry Pat, and they get themselves in a place where they believe that they can Terry Pat anybody they come in contact with, quote unquote, for their safety. Right?
I don't like that.
So it's sort of true. A Terry Pat requires that you have reasonable suspicion that this person is committing a crime, not just some crime, not just, you're a black dude in a white neighborhood, but a specific crime, right? We've got a report of a burglar case in houses or an intruder case in houses. I've got some sort of description. This cat matches those two things, date, time, location, and my description. Okay, that's probably enough. Now I say I've got a reasonable articulable suspicion that this cat's committing a specific crime. Next thing for a Terry Pat, I have to have reason to believe this person is dangerous to me.
Right.
Here's where the cops start falling down.
Right.
They start believing everyone's dangerous to them.
Which is
objectively is true.
Yeah.
Right? But subjectively
is
not. It's completely case to case.
Right.
Right? I mean, let's say it's have you met Ivan in person?
I did.
My partner. Okay, so for your people, Ivan is 6'9". He's a decent boxer. He's a pretty good kickboxer. And he's not exceptional, but he's a pretty talented jiu-jitsu player.
Isn't he like a brown belt?
He's a brown belt now. And when he was new, I could fold him like origami 10 years ago. But even then, he'd run stuff that I was like, your kung fu's no good in this village, bro. I'm better at this than you, right? And he'd sweep me anyway, and I'd realize, oh, he's wrestling with a little kid. All the angles are different. Ivan's range and ability to grab or strike you is beyond that of a regular person, right? Of kind of an average cat. So you run into Ivan, you can articulate, okay, I was a little fearful that this cat could do some damage. On the other hand, if my burglar is smaller, older, kind of infirm, and old people do bad shit, right? I have less to articulate here. Third prong to Terry is you have to have reason to believe they have a weapon. Some reason to believe that. Now, again, objectively, you can say, well, I always believe everybody has a weapon. There are so many knives and pockets out there that I think you could get away with. Everybody I know carries a knife in their pocket. I think you can get away with that. But here's where they fall down, and I saw it all the time. I'm sure it still does because they tell each other this rumor all the time. Do you handcuff someone to Terry Pat that? Plus side, it's safer for everybody. Downside, as soon as they're in handcuffs, you can no longer articulate that you're doing a consensual search.
Right.
So now if you want to move on and search the backpack or the wallet or whatever, you've closed that window on yourself. So these cops try to play the middle and they say, okay, well, I'm going to Terry pat him, but I'm not going to handcuff him. And then once I'm satisfied we're safe, I'll continue this conversation and look for more consensual searches in this contact. So I say, okay, and this was a bad habit in leadership, but it was a good habit, I think, in a training class like this. I'd put him on the stand and say, okay, officer, let me ask you this. You say you Terry patted my client because you had reasonable articulable suspicion of a specific crime. They were dangerous to you, and they might have had a weapon. The officer says, yes, yes, and yes. Cool. But you chose not to handcuff this dangerous criminal with a weapon. Yeah, shaking your head, right? Because the logic breaks down.
Yeah.
Really, and most of what officers are out there doing, they're calling a Terry, is really a consent search. You just say, hey, ma'am, do you have any weapons on you, anything sharp, anything that can hurt me? They say no. You say, you know what, I don't know you. I'm sorry, we haven't met. Can I just check? I mean, it's just a trust but verify. It's not that I don't trust you, but can I just check?
Yeah.
And people say, sure, you can check. And you throw a real quick, meeting the physical requirements of Terry Pat, not intruding in your pockets, blah, 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 blah. But the other beauty of a consent search is you hit something in the pocket, you can exclude it as a weapon, but you do think it's a bag of dope, you can say, hey, is that a bag of dope? And they're going to say, go ahead. See, I'm still in consent searching now.
Yeah.
Right? So I say, is that a bag of dope? And they say, yeah, it is. And you say, can you hand that to me? I'm going to end up with it anyway, right? So, and they go, yeah, here you go. Cool, thanks. The consent search is so much more powerful. Yeah. But these cops are going to tell each other rumors.
I think that is it's a smarter way of policing because there are so many like fine lines and whatnot, but that requires a certain level of calm and presence that not every police officer possesses. Like, how do you do that calmly? Like, how do you teach that to people to de-escalate themselves enough to where they're following the protocol, they're not getting themselves into a situation that they don't need to be legally or, physically escalate or whatever?
So I touch them a couple ways. And this is law enforcement. I would guess all first responders, but law enforcement in particular. Mm-hmm. The first thing I touch is their ego. First thing I say is the person who's yelling is the person who's not in charge. The minute you started yelling, you have acquiesced that you are not in charge. This person is in charge of you, not the other way around. So I want to hook their ego. The next thing I want to hook is their intellect and say, how effective is it? Yelling, no, stop, don't do that, doesn't work on 4-year-olds. How effective is it? Right? Are you getting anything done here? Third thing I do, and I didn't watch a lot of Cops in the Room because it wastes time. But when I was a new cop, Cops was a huge show, and now there are similar shows. If you watch Cops, one, don't be on Cops. Being on Cops means you're doing some bad copping, right? Because the good copping goes down calmly as boring TV.
Right.
Being on Cops means you're probably not good at this job today. But if you watch Cops, the person who's yelling is never, ever in charge. It's always, especially you'd see them, and I'd see them in the field sometimes too. You see these cops just yelling and flipping out, right? And the bad guy would be like, what is wrong with you? Calm down, man. So the next thing we would do is practice it. Physically, when they're in the room, we practice verbal commands. We give verbal commands. We practice verbal commands so that in the field, you're going to sync to your training. You are not going to rise to the occasion with some kind of superpower you didn't have yesterday. So in the room, right? I mean, that's
totally, yeah.
Yeah, and they tell themselves that rumor too, by the way. They'll be like, well, on that day I'll be fine. Dude, you can't do it on the mat with a semi-compliant partner. In the field, just let them go and ask for help. I swear to God, you're going to get everybody hurt. Just don't. So on the mat, we would insist calm, rational commands. If there's somebody in your face pointing a gun at you, yelling, and we would yell, I'm not going to do it here, but we would yell, put your fucking hands up, let me see your fucking hands, goddammit, hands. The fact that you can kind of see that there's a badge on them somewhere behind that big-ass muzzle of a gun, that it's the only thing you can focus on, doesn't make them feel any better about this crazy person with a gun screaming in their face. It's not effective, and it's a bad look. So we would practice on the mat a couple things. One, treat them as you would, and this is an oversimplification, but it works. Treat them as you would a dog or horse. Every time they do what you want, reward them. Hey, will you show me your hands? Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Hey, turn around for me, okay? Thanks. I really appreciate it. Every time they don't, punish them. Hey, turn around for me. No. Okay, this is going to get worse for you. This only gets worse for you. There's no good ending the more you argue and fight. Okay, we know how this ends. So please turn around for me. But reward, punish. But reward them every time and reward them instantly. Respectfully and kindly. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't cost you anything at all to say thank you. I appreciate it. It's easy. The other thing is, if you are getting fired up and starting to feel yourself falling into this emotional trap, falling into a capture, start talking to yourself. Start saying things like, okay, nobody has to get hurt out here. Mm-hmm. This is going to work out. If we just follow the plan, we're going to be fine, right? Let's do something smart. That was one of my partner Brian's big ones. Let's do something smart here, bro.
I love that self-talk. It is when you said that to me on the podcast, it felt good in my body, because it's outside of police work. I think that it's getting more popular. People talk to yourself, talk to your thoughts, whatever. But it's talking to yourself seems like a pussy thing to do in such a macho environment. So to hear that I think that's really, really wise and innovative.
And I do owe it to my old partner Brian, but we built and expanded. And even talking to yourself, I mean, even in our regular civilian life, when you're not sure what to do, talking through the problem sometimes helps a lot, because you help yourself move step by step to the solution, right? You can do the same thing in a high-risk contact. You can say, okay, first things first, right? One of the concepts is win. What's important now? It's an acronym. What's important now? Like right now, what's important? What's important is we bring this thing to a stop. So we say, everybody stop. I need to see your hands. That's what's important next. Cool. Listen, this is going to work out. We're going to do something smart out here. Nobody has to get hurt out here. I need you to listen to me carefully. I'm going to speak calmly for you. And I need you to do the things I ask you to do. And if we can do that, we'll all go where we need to go safely and with some measure of calm, right? It's simple for them. Now that instead of a bunch of complicated shit and a bunch of yelling and all that, they can process that. And if you speak, and this was so important, it's a personal style thing, but we made sure they did it on the mat, and I believe it translated to the field. Speak respectfully. Say, sir, I get it. Shit day, and it's worse because I'm here. I get that part. I'm not going to do anything beyond what I have to do to make your day or your life any worse here. Right, go ahead.
So I was listening to that video on Police One with the Bundy fucking militia standoff, whatever that was.
Yeah, that was a day.
And you said something in there. So you're talking about how you show up to. Okay, so for people that haven't heard about this case, like in a nutshell, explain it.
So, in a nutshell, there's a family out in Mesquite, Nevada, near Mesquite, Nevada. They graze on public lands. They graze cattle, and they got into a big beef with the Bureau of Land Management about what they owe in fines, and it escalated.
Oh, I thought it was Black Lives Matter.
No, it's Bureau of Land Management.
Because you kept saying BLM, and I'm like, what the fuck do black people want with cattle? Like, I didn't know this about us. Okay.
That's fucking funny.
So the Bureau of Land is a completely different story. Okay.
Right.
Cool.
So they're federal law enforcement agents, right? They're federal law enforcement officers. And they contract with some cowboys, and now they're going to round the cattle up, and they're going to take the cattle, seize the cattle as part of the fine, and auction it off.
Okay.
Well, the family decides to resist with force, and they get a bunch of support from around the country for these sovereign citizen, these constitutionalist militias. And all these dudes show up with assault rifles and pack gear and shit, and they're going to defend the cows. And BLM is not prepared for this. The shitty part is we find out after the fact BLM was kind of prepared for that, and they might have pulled a Waco out there if we had they might have. It was a weird vibe. But I showed my counterpart at Metro showed up. A dude named TJ. You've probably seen TJ. TJ is.
I don't think I know him.
Have you ever seen the choke slam behind the McDonald's, the black cop in the yellow shirt choke slamming a dude behind McDonald's on the strip? It's on YouTube.
What? No, but just send it to me later so I can watch it.
Just Google choke slam cop. You'll see TJ talking to this kid behind the McDonald's on the strip. This kid was inside pushing people around and beating people up, and then TJ encounters him outside. TJ's squad is the specific problem-solving squad on the strip, and not in a problem-solving unit where you go out and you look for like the root causes of gangbanging and that kind of thing. They're the guys that show up when it's going bad and and somebody says, "Hey, I need some help." TJ and his goon squad show up, and it goes quiet pretty fast typically.
Yeah.
So when TJ runs into this kid behind the McDonald's, they're having a conversation. Kid's denying the whole thing. TJ says, "Turn around, put your hands behind your back," whatever TJ says. The kid says no or something, and TJ looks him off. He looks away from the kid like he's not paying attention, and then he snaps back and choke slams this kid to the ground like in this really explosive, violent way. It's hilarious if you're into that.
I'm not. So back to the standoff.
So the standoff. So I walk up, and there's TJ with his 12 guys. I walk up with I had 21 guys. They were all happened all to be men that day. I think. Do I have any ladies with me? Anyway, I got my 21 troops. And I walk up to TJ, and it is so spooky and so tense. He says, "You motherfucker, I never see you unless it's like this. I'm good if I never see you again." And I said, "Back at you, brother." And I gave him a big hug. I said, "The next time I see you, we better be in an office somewhere."
Right. In a bar, far from here.
So it was a big scary day. I pulled over we did bring it to a close without killing anybody.
So that's the part that I liked hearing, was that you did this whole fucking power move. Like you show up, like, and you said in the video that like it was that feeling in the air where you're like, I don't want to kill someone, but I will. And that it was a mutual feeling on both sides. So there's like this tension in the air. And then you fucking pull this like power move, and you tell your dudes to go put on traffic vests to like slow the situation down. Like That is so counterintuitive. Like, was that just like a direct order? Was it calm things down and that's what you decided to do? Like, what made you think of that?
So I got there in two ways. One, when I got out of the car, physically got out of the car, it's just utter chaos. TJ's got his skirmish line, keeping the public away from these federal agents, and that's it. There is no other control whatsoever. And I grabbed the very first armed person I saw, and I shook his hand and said, "Hey, my name's Thom Jackson, and I got to keep this roadway going and keep this kind of moving forward just a little bit." And the guy's kind of trying to get his hand back, but he's wearing a handgun, so I'm not letting go of his hand right away. And I said, how do we move this forward? What can we do? And the guy said, "Well, that dude over there won't move his truck. And the truck's in the middle of the freeway. It's stopping all traffic." I said, "Okay, that's a place to start. We'll move the truck." So I let him go. I said, "Okay, we'll move the truck." And I turned to ask one of my sergeants, "Hey, go get that truck moved." And this guy yells in my ear, "Are you going to fucking do your job or am I?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. It's like that." Okay. So the rookie cop's answer is to turn around and yell back, "I'm going to do my fucking job and you stay out of my fucking way while I do it." Right? Which I think is a terrible move in that moment. It really was that tense. It really was that feeling of, I don't want to kill this dude, but I will. And it was going both ways. So I turned back and said, "Hey, we'll move the truck. We're pretty good with that. We'll be all right." So I never saw the truck again. Sergeant Serena must have moved it, I guess. I don't know. But I thought about it for a moment, and I know one of the things that we can do with a crowd is go into the crowd. You kind of have two options. You can either barrier up, like you see with riot shields and all that, mm-hmm. or you can move in, and you want a buddy system, but you can move in and just kind of keep the crowd, just kind of interact with them as best you can and see what's going on. This was clearly to me a miss the crowd, go and move into the crowd and talk to them, feel. And I wanted to see my guys and gals. I did not need to lose them and the easiest way to do that is traffic vest. And I thought it wasn't a big conscious decision, but when it occurred to me, I thought, okay, what do I get? I get visibility, and it's almost a UN blue helmet, non-combatant, clearly gearing ourselves to be part of the solution, not gearing ourselves for combat here.
Yeah.
Right? Not meaning we weren't ready for combat. We got an assault rifle in every car. The troops can do it. But as a move, I think it did have good impact. I think they took the message from us. We're not here set up for combat. We're here trying to solve it, and we're just going to keep on keeping on trying to solve it. The other thing we did, and it was specific, was the crowd, the kind of organizers. They were loosely organized. The organizers had like big coffin ice chests of water, and I told my guys, "Hey, ask them for a water. Just have a little simple human interaction with them. Say, hey, it's hot out here. I got called out from home. I didn't get a chance to really pack my bag. Can I get a water from you?" And I think just those little touches in that circumstance totally worked for me.
So I understand the ego in everybody, including myself, to be your defense mechanism if you perceive there to be danger of some kind. And anytime that you're in that ego, like, it becomes really difficult for you to remember things like, oh, I'm a human. Oh, this is a human. Oh, like, things don't have to go the direction that they're headed. So I think it's really cool that you encouraged them to, like, step out of that place of ego and, like, into humanity where it says, like, oh yeah, you can have water. Like, that is such a huge shift. And I don't, like, that's so amazing that you knew to do that was something that you wanted to try, and that it was so effective.
Yeah, I definitely had good effect, but I do cheat it, right? And again, this pack of egomaniacs, one of the things we try to thread through our force training is, you're the most dangerous thing here. Don't lose sight of, you are the most dangerous thing here, and this is going to end. If this goes violently and ends in violence, you're going to be the victor. That's okay. It's okay to have a lust for righteous combat. Some people, I mean, we're just, if you got a warrior mindset, it's okay to embrace that. But you're the most dangerous thing here, and you don't have to run around and peacock it and show it and tell them you're going to do it before you do it. If you come to it with the point of view, if you're well prepared and you're trained and you're ready to go, and you come to them from the point of view of, I'm going to win. This is a foregone conclusion. It's a matter of how much damage do they feel like taking before they decide to give up. And some people die, right? I find it easier to be calm, and I can leverage these cops' egos by saying, you're going to win. So don't put a bad look out there. Be the quiet professional. And it's okay to if you have to tell them at some point, hey, listen, I'm about done asking you. In a moment here, you're going to be on defense. I'm going to put my hands on you. Believe it. So let's save ourselves all that trouble. You don't have to go to the hospital, right? I don't even know who pays those bills, but I've taken a bunch of people to the hospital on the way to jail, and I don't want you to be one of those people. And you can speak to them, even stroking your own ego, but explaining to them, hey. Yeah. And I think that day out there, that was kind of where I tried to put everybody's head was, hey, there might be some assault rifles out here, but every one of us has an assault rifle. Every one of us shoots. Every one of us. One of the things that
and we got response.
We know how to do this. Interesting side note, in the debrief of that, the Metro side I was on the high ground, Metro was on the low ground, and there's a fence, and the crowd kept kind of pressing the fence, and one of the Metro lieutenants told the SWAT unit, because we eventually got some backup and some help, but SWAT came out, and the lieutenant told his SWAT guys, hey, go push them off that fence. And the SWAT sergeant said no. And the lieutenant said, I'm sorry, it sounded weirdly like you just said no to me. And the SWAT sergeant said, yeah, it's no.
Yeah.
And the lieutenant, he at the time was really angry, but in the debrief, he said, that guy saved us a lot of heartache, because he told me my guys have two speeds, right? It's a 2-speed blender. It's off or liquefy, and liquefy is not appropriate out here today.
Yeah.
Yet.
Read the fucking read the room. Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to give them that sense of, hey, we're going to win it. But you don't have to run around yelling to win it. Again, the person who's yelling is not the person in charge.
So you said in the interview also that when you got in your car, you started crying and you called your wife. I want to know, okay, so back to the reason for this podcast is I want officers to hear from other officers how you...
That dog's mad. That dog's mad at the pool guy. Goddamn pool guy.
Get him. What's your dog, like 5 pounds?
Yeah, that's 11 pounds of toxic fury right there.
When you get into your car and like that moment of like, holy shit kind of sets in and you reach out to your wife and whatever, like what does that moment of transition look like to you? Was it always just like, I'm just going to feel whatever I feel? Or did you have some methods to like de-escalate your body? Because that is what I'm finding officers are having a hard time actually de-escalating their bodies rather than just going, I can calm myself down, not really calming myself down, but I can transition into the next thing without bringing that same type of energy. How did you learn to calm yourself down, become vulnerable and all that stuff?
So through practice, really. I mean, you got to model the way, right? You got to work out your steps on how you're going to do it. And I wish I'd had somebody like you to help me learn much earlier in my career how to go about that. Most of my career, I followed the traditional law enforcement method, which is meet your buddies at the bar after shift, self-medicate, tell deeply, wildly inappropriate stories and laugh.
Yeah.
Right? Right, just wildly.
Some of your stories hurt my heart. I'm like, I don't like this.
That's it. We're laughing our heads off.
I know, you guys. Fuck.
That's where I found the guy's head. Can you believe it? Right?
Not here for it.
So, I did some kind of self work on once it's safe and calm, it was okay to stop and go, whoa. My go-to was start writing the report. Even if I'm doing it in my head, although I talk out loud in my car a lot, I'm pretty audio. And if I say it out loud, I'll retain it fairly well. Mm-hmm. When it's super fresh, if I started writing my report, I found that kind of reliving it also gave me some release of, okay, yeah, that's how that went down. That fucking happened. All right, then.
So verbalizing and talking about it.
Yeah. And just out to myself in the car.
Yeah.
Just out loud. We're weird creatures under great stress. I mean, I've been asked about that decision to go on a traffic vest a lot. It was fast. I was listening to my subbrain, and my subbrain said, do this, and I did.
Also known as your intuition. Just
right.
saying. You can call that's such a cop way. My subbrain. What the
my
fuck?
Subbrain, my lizard brain,
not my
the part
intuition.
of my brain that came from the Paleohistoric era. Probably not a word.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so talking it out loud, I think that that's good because like very specific, tangible tools, I think are going to be helpful for people. So I was thinking of a question when you were talking about the Terry Pat stuff, and a big part of what I've experienced with cops is like this constant skepticism and trying to be technical about fucking everything. So how do you recognize that you do that in your personal life, or did you see that playing out in your personal relationships with people who were not cops? How do you still do that?
It's funny. So I try not to. I try to be more reasonable. And I'll tell you where that comes from, by the way. I'm way off the reservation, but if we're talking to cops right now, I want to say this. Stop fucking worrying about liability. Liability is the fucking boogeyman. It's in your closet. It's under your bed. It's going to come get you.
Liability,
right?
like in relation to police work?
Yes, in police work. And then they carry this paranoia over. Oh my God, the rule is exactly this. First of all, if you're a good cop, like a cop in a busy environment, I don't mean good. If you're busy, because it's about numbers. If you're busy in a busy environment, you are going to get sued at some point in your career. Believe it. Just make friends with that now. I've been sued, I know of 3 times. I've probably been sued more than that. But if they can kill it early enough in the process, you never even hear about it as the named defendant. Everybody I know has been sued. I have asked this question all over the United States. I've been training in one capacity or another for well over 20 years. I've asked this question all over the United States. I have never met a cop who personally paid. Never. And it's a complete unicorn. It is your cousin's friend saw it once and they swear to God it's real. Fucking Bigfoot. And if you're acting in good faith, you're going to be okay. They're going to sue you, and then hopefully you never go on the stand, but you're going to be okay. Just don't act in bad faith. That's the easiest liability limiter. So you ask if I'm able to get away from that mindset and not carry it in my personal life. The governor of Nevada has come out twice in the last week talking about businesses that he's ordering to close. He does not have statutory authority to do that. And I've found myself falling into a trap a couple times with my own family about who this motherfucker think he is. Mm-hmm. He can't do that. And then I go way down that rabbit hole of, well, in the end, he's going to say, well, I ordered it closed. Some cop's going to show up on their doorstep. And are you going to find a cop who's willing to put their hands on some lady in a nail salon because she refused to close for the governor's orders, right? And Ida and I had this conversation. He's like, well, I might tell my guys to do it because right now I'm not that worried about the Constitution. And I'm like, well, you're not getting your lawsuit till for 6 years, bro. You think 6 years from now you're going to be able to say, well, the Constitution didn't apply that day. But I found myself falling into the same rabbit hole. So I still fall back to it sometimes. I try not to. I try to take a more common sense and holistic approach to it, to my personal decisions in my personal life. But every now and then I'll be like, no, the rule says in these letters right here, paragraph 2.
Well, so I just meant more like in like personal relationships with people outside of police that has nothing to do with policing. So cops often don't have friends that are not cops.
Right.
So, and that's something that I believe needs to change because it's important to be reminded that, and this is for every situation in every area of life, you have to be reminded that there's more to life than what you are influenced by. And that will only help you. It's scary and it might be annoying and frustrating, but it's important. So do you find yourself like, kind of like nitpicking, relationships or things like that unnecessarily in order to be right? Or does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's a big trap. I mean, there's every cop I know to one extent or another falls into the zone of I only have cop friends. part of it is the decompression talk and the totally inappropriate stories, because as human beings, we kind of need to do that. And people who aren't in that circle, who haven't been damaged in that way, don't see the humor, right? And we're like, no, it was funny. So there's a hurdle there. But yeah, that need to be right. I see it in school teachers as well, by the way. School teachers are never wrong. Because they're literally professionally almost never wrong.
I struggle with that a lot. Like I am always right. And I want to let go of that for sure. So I'm listening for me too.
Yeah. So it's difficult. And I have to remind myself sometimes to be open to say, oh shit, well, I guess I'm wrong. Right. And not dig in and hold a position, especially an untenable position. If you're objectively wrong, like I've got a letter on my desk and I thought it said one thing, and my girlfriend said, no, it says this. And I was like, And I waited till we got home and I checked it, and she's right. And I got to say, oh, you're right. Of course you're right. But it was hard. I have to remind myself, you know what? You don't have it in front of you. You don't trust your memory on this, right? And it is a trap to be able to not be able to say, hey, it's okay. The other one that's a trap that I try to help the cops with, and this is true in their professional life too, you're going to take some losses. Every now and then, even all that tough talk and all that, now and then you're going to take a loss. You can't salvage this situation. The best thing you can do here is mitigate damage. And that's true for sure in our personal life, right? You come home from work and you've made a shit ton of decisions. This is Dr. Kevin Gilbrandt, but it's if you're out there and you're a law enforcement officer and you have not read Emotional Survival for cops, or however the title is, but it's Emotional Survival, read it. You made a shit ton of decisions. You've done a lot of talking. You come home and you say, and your significant other says, what do you want for dinner? And you literally don't want to make even one more decision. You say, I don't care. And over you find yourself getting in an argument that you said, I don't care. And what you meant was, I don't care. And somebody in good faith is saying, well, how about lasagna? Don't care. How about tacos? Don't care. How about asparagus? I don't care. And this conversation started because you look like you're refusing to engage. Yeah. And the other person is really just trying to honestly give you what you want for dinner, and you have a disconnect and not being able to say, hey babe, I made a lot of decisions. I'll talk to you about your day. I'll talk to you about my day. But what I don't want to do is decide on dinner. Will you please take that burden for me and just make a decision? If you would just help me in that way, I know you're trying to help me. If you would help me in that small way, that would help me a lot. I'm going to go take my boots off. But jumping that gap from I told her I don't care, I meant I don't care, stop fucking bugging me, jumping out, not falling into that trap is a skill unto its own, I think. So in my last podcast, I talked to, he was a homicide investigator, and he goes, I learned very early on in the relationship that my wife didn't actually want to know the details of my day. Alexa, off. And I said, okay, so like how like what would you do differently then? So I love that. So having a conversation with your spouse or your partner and letting them know that decision making can't be a part of like the home life in certain areas because of how many like heavy decisions that have been made. You're feeling overwhelmed. Yes. And you feel like you've done your part for the day. And being able to actually have that frank conversation, just say, it's not that I don't want to engage with you. It's fascinating that he learned not to share the details because a lot of cops are detail oriented. If you're an investigator, you're super detail oriented, and every detail jumps out to you. Well, so he said, I learned to say I'm fine. He goes, so every, for 20 something years or 17 years, however long he was married, he would say I'm fine. And I said, yes, but that also subconsciously communicates to your brain that the experience of your day is okay. So then when when it starts to affect you, then you have this internal combat that happens because you have told yourself the truth that it is fine. And now all of a sudden you have a problem with your way of thinking, which is problematic. So I think that that's helpful. That brings me to the fact that you have to be able to acknowledge your feelings. So I just posted, have you ever seen the feeling wheel? No. What? Hey, man.
Oh, okay. So I'm texting you the feeling wheel so you can look at it right now. And I want you to tell me where you're at right now. So
okay, first I'm gonna squirrel and investigator up on you. Are you ready?
Oh, okay.
So you're working away and you go, Alexa, off. In my brain, I thought, oh, she has a dog or a cat named Alexa, because in this house, when we say off, there's a dog on the back of the couch. Oh. So I thought, a dog or cat's named Alexa. Okay. And then I caught up to it and went, oh, wait a second.
Yeah, my dog, he's trained to wear, because she reminds me in the morning to feed the dog. So when she goes off, he's like, oh, he starts getting, bitch, feed me. So the feeling wheel, I posted it to the Tech Mobility Instagram, and this is an important part of accepting where you're at and telling yourself the truth. And this will help communicate to your loved ones where you're at. But you have to be able to identify where you're at.
So, interesting. Right now I'm in the green, and I'm somewhere between. I'm probably an inquisitive.
I like that. Yeah. I like that. So I've been in the whole top region for this last week. Fucking COVID. Fucking fuck. So, but often we think of, oh, I'm angry, or, oh, I'm happy, or, oh, I'm disgusted. But there's so many like sub feelings that come from that can release you from thinking that you're something that you're not. So being able to say that you're overwhelmed or that you're feeling withdrawn, that's a form of anger, but you're also able to medicate yourself based off of what you're feeling. Or I don't know, medicate, it's the right word, but able to help yourself by understanding where you're feeling.
Sure, just being able to say the words would help a lot. I mean, I'm looking at when I see cops do things that are not very smart, I see them in that orange piece of the wheel that they go disgust, then they're disapproval, and then they're either judgmental or loathing with this person they're contacting. Mm-hmm. That becomes the default setting for some of them. Which is as soon as you can almost see it. As soon as they put their uniform on, they're already in somewhere in that thing, in that orange part where they're disgust or they're avoid people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And yeah, it's like you're talking about physical sensation, physical, actual, real tools, and some of those are physical, some of them are mental. One of the things that I did very, very intentionally, and this is a leadership issue, not a use of force issue, is I wore my gear. I wore the exact gear, the gear itself rotated in and out, but I always wore a rig that I could wear on patrol. Every tool, taser, baton, 2 sets of cuffs, 3 magazines on my belt. Wore my body armor every day. I finished my career, my last almost 10 years. It was over 10 years, was captain and above, and I did very little work in the field unless I stumbled onto a Bundy ranch like a fucking idiot. But every day I'd walk in my closet, and I'd look up, my vest is hanging there, and I'm like, I'm not going to get in a gunfight today. This was the mantra I put myself there. I thought, I'm not going to get in a gunfight today. What, am I going to have a stapler accidental discharge? What the fuck, right? And then I think, okay, so I'm not going to wear my vest. Cool. But by that logic, Tom, if you're not going to get in a gunfight, then you don't need to take that gun. Well, that's completely unacceptable. The gun is not just phallic and a symbol of my authority, right? You never know when you actually need a gun. So on goes the vests.
Yeah.
Right? And I had guys commented on it over the years. You're the only commander in this wing of the building who's wearing a real rig that you could wear to work. And there's the shared suffering there, right? As a leadership. My guys and gals have to walk around in the heat and the snow, heat and the rain, and wear all this shit. The least I can do is carry some actual physical burden with them, at least show them outwardly, right? That I'm part of this crew, as best I can. Even though I was terrible cop by the end, I'd gotten so far from being a good. One of my favorite moments in leadership, my best sergeant walked up to me and he looked down, and he scratched the back of his head, and he said, "Hey, Chief, could you get out of here? You're really fucking my scene up right now. My guys don't know what to do because you're here. Could you go write an email or some shit, whatever it is you do?" I love that.
I do too. Dude, I think that so kind of going back to the emotion wheel and and you talking about like what's not going to be helpful, getting people out of their ego. I think that like when others can help us identify, oh my God, I wish you all could see this like tough fucking guy and this fucking little baby Shih Tzu that he's holding.
He's single-handedly bringing back mutton chops.
Those look like, remember, did you see Josh's?
And he's bringing back mutton chops. That's the plan.
I love it. I think that if we can, if others that we trust can help us identify specifically where we're at with our emotions, then we can recall back to our training or your training that says, when you're in this area, that's not helpful. Because you can have a similar, right? Like you can have, like, passion and anger are the same things, right? But one has a different motivation than the other. So recognizing that, like, if you're in that judgmental loathing portion of the wheel, that's not helpful, right?
Right.
But this is.
Right. Yeah, I wish I'd met you many, many years ago, because I would have weaved all these things together or done my best. Because if we could, on a mat, but even in a debrief, if you can say, okay, where were you? Okay, was that helpful?
Dude.
Right, in a debrief, on this wheel, where were you in this moment? The moment you decided to make this decision.
Yeah.
Which worked out great or worked out poorly. One of the things I'll tell you about every cop I worked with is we did debriefs that were very dispassionate intentionally. I'm not here to judge you. We don't take any notes. We are just here to talk through it. We'll work on reports and shit later. But this is your chance. You don't have to talk. You don't even have to attend. But if we're going to set up a specific event, everybody's getting in the room, from the dispatcher to the last cop who showed up, and you have a chance to tell your story if you want to. They were always so much harder on themselves than on every nitpicking, every decision they made and every outcome. And I found myself, after a few of them, once I got, I hope, a little better at it, I would be offering forgiveness, even though in theory I got to wait till I get my internal affairs complaint done and all this fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
I would say, hey man, you did the best you could in that moment. And if we had a tool like this wheel to say, well, where were you on the wheel at that moment? Give yourself a little forgiveness here. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, because you're not when you're in the heat of that moment, you know, like there's such little emphasis on the physiological, like how the brain works and how the body responds to that. If more people understood, like, hey man, the whole logic portion of your brain is not activated when you're in a situation like that. It can be, and you can still do things that are logical based on your training, but you don't necessarily have that same rapid response and like availability to pull on that intellect and logic. So forgive yourself a little bit. Like, take it easy on yourself. Like, take a deep breath and let's look at it. Like, where were you at on the wheel? Where would you like to be the next time that you have an encounter like that? What?
Right. Yeah.
Dude.
But even like real world practical solutions, if I was given like tactical advice like I used to, slowing down is almost always the right move. There are very brief moments in a contact when you might decide to accelerate this thing. Yeah. But slowing down is almost always the right move for you and them. Yeah. Take a little time pressure off everybody. It doesn't have to be a lot, but a little bit of time pressure off everybody. Everybody performs better. Almost always the right move.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, my friend.
Oh, well, Dave, for wrapping up, I got one story.
We got to wrap it up. We got to wrap it up.
All right, this is fast. Are you ready? But this is one of the places I got into the person who's yelling is almost always wrong. Okay. Right? That we had this dude. His first name was Mike. I won't say his last name. He's out there somewhere. This guy your reputation's your only currency, right? This guy's reputation with us was such that one night we've got a dude at gunpoint. Me and Mike. I'm the defensive tactics instructor. I'm the guy with good with handcuffs. So I'm going to do the handcuffing. And I put my handgun in my holster, and without thinking, right? Don't know where I was on the wheel. I reach out and I touch Mike on his shoulder and I say, Mike, don't shoot me. And as I'm walking up, I'm thinking, oh my God, I just said, Mike, don't shoot me. Oh my God. And I meant it, right? So from then on, if it was that, I would say, Mike, go handcuff that guy. But so here's how Mike got this kind of reputation. He pulls over a cab. He's behind a hotel on the Strip. And at the time, we had a whole bunch of former Russian cab drivers. I don't know if they had like a group sale or what. It seemed like everybody is a Russian national trying to get naturalized. So he pulls this car over, and it's this Russian guy. but it's like this former Spetsnaz, done hard time in Afghanistan. This guy's somebody, right?
I want your balls mashed in shit.
Pretty much, yeah. And he had hands like Richard Ramirez. He's got these monster hands. And he gets out of the cab, and Mike says, "Get back in the cab." And the guy says, "No." And Mike says, "Get in the cab." And the guy says, "No." And there's some sort of yelling that goes on. And Mike draws his hand. And the guy stops. It wasn't there, but all accounts are. The guy stops, and he says, "Are you going to shoot me?" Mike says, "Get in the cab." So this guy walks up on him and starts backing Mike up. Hands down, just walks up until Mike hits the back of the hotel, and the dude walks up until the muzzle of the handgun is on his chest and says, "Are you going to shoot me?" And Mike has to say, "No." And the guy says, "Call your sergeant." And when I get there, this dude's sitting on the fender of Mike's patrol car, smoking a cigarette. And Mike's at the back of his own car, looking all sad, right? So I'm like, "What's going down?" And they both tell me effectively the same story. I'm like, "Cool, all right. Hey, man." I tell the cabbie, "Hey, sorry about all that. You good?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm good. This kid needs to talk to somebody." I'm like, "Cool, okay." So here comes my partner, Brian Watson. And he comes up, and we tell the story. And Brian goes, "Wow, okay. Well, here's the thing, Mike. You know that most handgun combat is going to happen in that 10 to 11 foot range, right? We know that statistically. So why don't you just shave your sights off? Why don't you just shave the sights off? Because if you're going to be drawing and putting away, you don't need sights for that kind of range. Just shave the gun, dude, if you're going to be drawing the gun that much." And Mike's nodding. I'm like, "Oh, okay. And then Brian goes, "And then when somebody stuffs it up your ass, it's so much easier for us to get out."
Right.
So that's my Mike story. Mike, don't shoot me. Jesus Christ.
Oh my God. That's awesome. I love it. Thom, I'm so glad that we got the chance to chat. I learned some stuff that I really, really liked about how you like to change the pace and calm things down. I think that's super, super wise. Getting that cushion.
And that time cushion, you'll save lives out there. You really will. So there you go.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Thom. You are amazing.
Thanks, you too. I'll talk to you.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Come on, crazy boy.
So good. I love it. I love listening to stories where there's resolution, there's shit that you can do, that you can take away from it. Yes. Special thanks to Thom. You guys check out his podcast, him and his buddy Ivan, his life partner Ivan. Oh, I love it. Not really life partner, but they definitely do some gay shit together for sure with all that BJJ jiu-jitsu. But you can check him out on the SRDB podcast on all major podcast platforms. He is an amazing trainer. I'll be posting some contact information. So if you want to reach out to him, you can ask him some questions. He wants you guys to know that he is there for you to answer any questions. So thank you again for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, like the video, follow me on Tack Mobility Instagram, because I got them giveaways. Special thanks to my sponsor of Controlling the Mind and the Machine podcast, sponsor Ravencrest Tactical. Head over to the website, ravencresttactical.com. Use promo code ERICA, ERICA, for 10% off. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back again next week with a super cool guest out of Alabama, talking to us about shootings and how to recover. Be safe.